Is Spence versus Porter 2 next? We answer that. Stay tuned. Please like and subscribe. Help us hit 10,000 subscribers. Share on all forms of social media. Leave us a message below. Welcome to another edition of The Hot Stove. WBC and IBF unified welterweight champ Errol "The Truth" Spence said that in the wake of his close and somewhat controversial decision victory over Shawn Porter last week, he said, let's run it back. And Porter agreed. Let's do the rematch. Spence was supposed to fight Danny Garcia on January 25th. The location has not been finalized, but it was supposed to be either the Staples Center or back in New York, and Dallas was still in play as well. But it looked like, from what we're hearing, it was supposed to be the Staples Center, although that was not official. Those other venues, those other locations were also possibilities. You saw after the face-off, Danny was announced as his next opponent. That seemed to have been formalized, but Spence is saying that he wants to run it back with Porter, like a true champion, okay? Spence is not happy with the close, controversial decision. He wants to right that wrong, so to speak. He wants to beat Porter convincingly, at least convincingly. He wants to convince the public that he won that fight. And to be honest, it's a better fight. Spence versus Porter 2 is a better fight. Look, this is a championship move by Errol Spence. This is something Floyd would have done, right? Floyd, both of his controversial wins, and I don't even think the McDonough fight was controversial. I thought he won that clearly. I thought the second fight was actually closer, scorecard-wise. But he went back and he fought Marcos Maidana right away. Let's get that right. This is what Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera did. The first fight was really close. Morales got the decision, and said let's run it back. And then Barrera did the same thing when he got the close decision. This is how champions behave. This is a championship move, and I give my boy Errol Spence, Dallas, Texas, all the credit in the world for doing that. He doesn't want to just have a victory in name only against Porter. He wants to beat Shawn Porter. And Porter, Porter thinks he can probably do a couple things differently and edge out a decision. Maybe get some different judges and do it again and get a better decision. It would not be unreasonable, and we scored it for Shawn Porter. It would not be unreasonable to say that Shawn Porter won that fight. We had it 114-113. And on top of that, Porter's way more deserving than is Danny Garcia. Look, Garcia's not really at this point in time deserving of another title fight. He lost to Porter, he lost to Thurman, and he clearly lost those fights. And I know people are going to say, oh, he won. He didn't win either of those fights. Now stop. He lost both those fights. And he only has wins over the last few years. Going back years now, he really only has wins over Bam Bam and Granados. Bam Bam Rios and Adrian Granados. Now, to be fair, the Granados fight was really good. Right? In reality, it was probably his best performance at 147. It's a good win and a good performance. He beat him better than Porter did, obviously. Not sure what that means, right? He's stepped up twice against the top welterweights, and he lost both of them. Now he's going to fight the best of the PBC bunch, and he's going to lose even worse, right? So, he clearly lost to Thurman. He clearly lost, but he's a step behind those guys. And those guys are a step below Spence. So, he's not going to beat Spence. No one in their right mind would think Danny Garcia is going to beat Errol Spence. Someone would pick him. Not that it's the most impossible thing. He hasn't deserved it. He's likely not going to win the fight. And, he's done nothing to warrant that fight. Porter fought him in a 50-50 type of fight. Porter fought Spence. Porter's more deserving of it, right? Porter versus Spence 2 or Garcia versus Spence, which is more competitive? Porter versus Spence. We all know it is. It's a better fight. And I want to address one other thing. Because when this came out, I heard the haters hating. They said Spence is ducking Danny Garcia. Stop that. That's ridiculous. Spence would destroy Garcia. No one, like I said, no one in their right mind would pick Swift. And you know that. So that's something crazy we've been hearing, that Spence is ducking Danny Garcia. That's ridiculous. He's ducking Garcia to fight a guy who just gave him hell, who beat Danny Garcia less than a year ago. You understand the absurdity of that, right? There's no way Spence is talking Danny Garcia to fight a better opponent in Porter who already beat Danny Garcia. And so why would you duck Garcia to fight a guy who just gave you hell? That makes no sense. Look, I get that there's a minority, like the majority of the people think Spence won that fight, and I understand that. But look, it's not like no one thinks that Porter won. Porter, there's a sizable minority, right? There's certainly a noticeable and sizable minority that think Porter won that fight. The most common scorecard I've come across on social media and etc. is 114-113 Spence. It's 6 rounds to 6 with a 2-point round for the knockdown round in the 11th. After rewatching that fight, that's what I scored. Originally, I scored the 12th round for Spence. For Porter, I watched it again, I scored it for Spence, and that was the difference. I had it even going into that fight. So, like, that's the kind of fight this was. 114-113. I know the judges didn't have it. 116-112 and 115-111. 116-111, 115-112. The judges had a little bit wide both ways. But 114-113, one way or the other, is probably the right score. So that's what we had here. So let's run it back. I mean, this should be run back. It was that competitive. It was that good. Both fighters want to do it again. There should be nothing that holds this up. And it's a better fight than anything that can be made right now for Spence. Pacquiao's not fighting. Pacquiao's not fighting Spence. Keith Thurman's not fighting Spence. So that means it's Garcia or Porter. And Spence ain't fighting Crawford. So it's one of two guys. Danny Garcia or Shawn Porter. Those are the big name options. So it's, the better name, the better fight would be Shawn Porter. And I want to address that one other thing. I think this confirms that Bud versus Spence, the fight that everyone wants to see, the fight that would be a huge pay-per-view success. I'd say 500,000 to 700,000 pay-per-view buys. A huge success. It's not happening anytime soon. They're going to take Spence through the PBC ringer. He will fight Garcia and Porter in his next 2 fights. His next 2 fights will be against Danny Garcia and Shawn Porter. Should he win the first one. For sure. I don't know what order, but those are his next 2 opponents. After that, he will fight Thurman. Okay? So now we're already a year and a half out. We'll close out 2021 by him fighting his IBF mandatory. So those are his next 4 fights. I can almost guarantee it. Pacquiao's not going to fight him. So that leaves the other 4. That will leave these fights. That will leave a rematch with Porter, a Garcia fight, a Thurman fight, and an IBF mandatory, because the IBF makes you take those mandatories. That's his next 2 years. And then he's gone. Right? Then he's 31. He's at 154. He's not in this division anymore. Sorry. So I'm giving you what you don't want to hear. But that's the truth of the matter. The IBF makes you take those mandatories. You want to hold on to that belt? You got to fight that mandatory. And then his other 3 fights over the next 2 years is going to be those 3 names that I just gave you. It's going to be Garcia, Porter, or Porter Garcia. Those will be his, and then Thurman will be in 2021. And so will his IBF mandatory. And then he's gone. I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news here, guys, but we are not getting Shawn Porter. We're not getting Errol Spence versus Terrence Bud Crawford. Not going to happen. And it's a shame, too, right? And we're not going to get Pacquiao versus other of those guys either, right? Look. Bud's not even in the picture. I mean, look, don't take this out on me. I'm just giving you the news. He's not going to be able to make 154 forever. I'm being generous in saying he's got 4 fights left, and none of those 4 fights are against Terrence Crawford. So the best fight that can be made, a fight we've been asking for 3 years now, likely will not happen, and that's a shame. And that's a shame. You know, it would be like if we played all the baseball players. Right? The baseball players just started. If we played all of them, and then we got to the World Series, and they said, "No, we're not going to play that." It's ridiculous. Let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts, comments below. Let us know if you'd rather see Garcia or Shawn Porter. Would you rather see Spence versus Garcia or Spence versus Porter too? For another edition of The Hot Stove, from Texas to the world, this is 3D Boxing saying thank you and God bless.
Enjoy 3D Boxing vlog videos? Show us some love by clicking the like button. Don't miss a tweet, post, story, or video. 3dboxingblog.com is also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hit the subscribe button now to stay inside the ring.